Just wanted to make this quick video after another fantastic win for the Warriors, despite missing Steph Curry, Andrew Wiggins, and Melton once again. The Pelicans were also missing a bunch of key players, but this could have easily been a letdown game. You know, the Warriors had a big win the night before. This is on a back-to-back. And actually, it wasn't looking so good in the early part of the game, particularly in the second quarter. I thought Steve Kerr made some really questionable decisions. And that's actually why I'm making this quick video, because I saw this post-game press conference with Steve, and he said some things that I feel like is potentially the ultimate indicator in terms of just everything going about as harmoniously as you could imagine this season. When you think about the fact that Steph Curry has missed some time now with a sprained ankle, the fact that Andrew Wiggins hasn't been available, as well as Melton, well, you feel like, well, that's not the best way to start a season, right? And yet, these are some really early tests for this team. You know, what happens when you run into some adversity? And luckily, I think the timing was pretty good given that they had a back-to-back against the depleted Pelicans team. But that aside, the competition doesn't really matter as much as how the Warriors execute when Steph Curry is not on the floor. And one thing that we've learned is that Potts is capable of stepping up to the plate and becoming the starting point guard of the team, and the team still being able to function under him. You know, it's a little wonky here and there, but what he's showing right now is that he's a starting caliber player. And honestly, I don't think Potts is playing well. I think he's been struggling out of the gates, especially from a scoring standpoint, especially from just a general offensive standpoint. I think he's been much better on the defensive end of the floor than the offensive end of the floor. And yet we now know that when the Warriors defense is intact, you can plug in a guy like Potts and they can still function as a team and still be capable of coming out with convincing victories. So that's excellent news. We learned that Lindy Waters can be in the starting lineup over whoever you want to say, whether it's Jonathan Kuminga or Andrew Wiggins. And although he didn't do a whole lot in terms of scoring the ball like he did in the first game against the Pelicans, he still stayed connected. He was overall a plus 13 in the starting lineup, and he played 30 minutes. And again, the stat sheet might not show it, but at the end of the day, he's a connector. I would like to see him be a little more aggressive when he's given this kind of opportunity. He only took 5 shots in the game, but it is off a back-to-back. The guy has never played this kind of minutes in the NBA, so hopefully he gets another opportunity. At the end of the day, he started and the team got a win, so that's great news. So ultimately, the Warriors are 4-1, and they are just dominating this season so far, both offensively and defensively. They are just top 5 everything, right? But here's the biggest thing of all. I was listening to Steve Kerr in the post-game press conference, and I was just kind of shocked by some of the things that he was saying about himself. Now, what do I mean? Let's take a quick listen.
Might be kind of a grimier, more defensive focused kind of.
Yeah, you know, with all of their guys out, I mean, they're missing, you know, half the roster. And the way last night's game went, this was a little bit of a letdown game possibility, and I thought we let our guard down in the
letdown possibility. That is, I mean, we all know about the trap games, right? At home, you're coming back from a long road trip and you were successful, and then you get home, you're playing some relatively easy team, you let up, you play a little loose, before you know it, you're down and you end up losing the game. Now, I was generally less concerned, even though the Pelicans still had Zion and Ingram. I knew that the Warriors still had their powerful defensive players in rotation. Draymond, Looney, Trace, GP2, Slow-Mo. You know, as long as they have their core defensive guys intact, they can always compete. Having said that, of course it's possible to get a letdown game. So let's continue to hear what Steve has to say.
early second quarter, I let my guard down a little bit. You know, and I didn't like a couple of my decisions early second quarter. And
are you serious? Steve Kerr taking accountability for some of the moves that he made after a win? I mean, wow. This is a guy that I always kind of go at because he takes no accountability for the things that he does, especially when you think about what he did last season. I remember going ballistic because after a game against the Mavs, after losing to that team, Steve came out talking about his team showed a lack of grit and he was just kind of throwing his players under the bus. And I'm just like, hey man, You wanted your team to show grit, but you put out a bunch of lineups that were incapable of showing grit. You're throwing out tiny lineups, 3-4 guard lineups out there. You're putting Dario Saric at the center spot on top of that, and then you're expecting the team to show grit. It makes no sense, right? So to hear Steve Kerr voluntarily talk about how he didn't like some of the decisions that he made, and to be honest with you, I didn't like some of those decisions that he made in the second quarter either. I was like, what is this lineup? Why is he going with this lineup? Why is he going away from Trace, who had a really great first quarter, and then he just doesn't get to play at all in the second quarter? I mean, when a guy plays well in the starting lineup, typically the right thing to do would be to reward him with more playing time, not less playing time, right? So as Steve just had a lot of wonky lineups, where one particular lineup, the only scorer on the team essentially was Moses Moody. No ball handler. It doesn't make any sense. There was another lineup where he elected to go small and put Jonathan Kuminga at the dreaded 4 position next to Draymond. And it just was spotty at best. The Warriors barely came away with a lead after the second quarter. So I was actually tweeting about these things in real time. And people think that I'm harsh on Steve Kerr and whatever, but he just said right here that he basically agrees with my assessment of what he was doing in the second quarter. He did a much better job for the remainder of the game, I must say. So the fact that Steve Kerr is choosing to keep himself accountable, I mean, that gives me a lot of hope. Because if there's one guy that I trust the least out of everybody in this organization, it would be the coaching of Steve Kerr. For all the nonsensical things that he did last season, the season before, I mean, I have a lot of issues with this guy, if you know me. So for me to be making this video to compliment Steve Kerr for taking accountability and making quicker adjustments on the fly, because it takes about 20 games before this guy makes any relevant adjustments. I mean, really, this to me is the ultimate indicator that the Warriors are in for a truly special season. All the predictions that I made aside, the 60 wins, top 3 defense, all that aside, when I can sit here and comfortably compliment the things that Steve Kerr is doing, oh, now we're cooking. For real, for real. Okay, let's continue with this real quick.
Second quarter, and that allowed them to get back in the game, and I give them a lot of credit. They were playing really good defense.
Look at that. He said his bad decisions allowed the other team to come back into this game. Ugh, miracles do happen. Okay.
Switching everything, making it difficult on us. We had all those turnovers in the second quarter, but our guys settled down. Second half, only 2 turnovers the whole half, and that's the kind of game you just have to find a way to win. And I thought we did that with our defense.
Steve, now I'm curious what decisions you didn't like that you made.
I just didn't like that.
You hear that? The journalist stopped Steve because Steve said, I made some decisions that I didn't like. And then the journalist actually asked a follow-up question asking, what exactly were those decisions that you feel you made some mistakes on? I mean, that is the media holding Steve Kerr accountable. That's also different because all these guys in the Warriors media, they want to be friendly with Steve. They want access to him and they don't necessarily really want to challenge him. So no matter what Steve is doing, 3-guard lineup, 4-guard lineup, Saric for 60 plus games, they'll never question whether he feels like he's making the right moves. Chris Paul in the closing line, like these questions were never really asked by the soft Warriors media. So to see this interaction with Steve and the media and everybody doing their jobs kind of beautifully, I feel like I'm back to the real world and off of what I basically consider to be clown world over the last couple of years. Ugh. Order restored.
My substitutions, the combinations, I kind of left one group out there with, for a few minutes without a ball handler, and we got a little bit jumbled offensively, and I probably should have kept Kyle Anderson in the game at the time. He was playing well. I pulled him, and then, they went on a little run.
Okay. And Trace?
Yeah, that's when he went with the Draymond Kuminga rotation, and that just wasn't good enough defensively. So yes, not to make this video overly long, but for the Warriors to be 4-1 after dropping that game against the Clippers, losing some key guys in the rotation, and for them to thrive the way they have, speaks to the coaching staff, Steve Kerr, Jerry Stackhouse, Terry Stotts, amazing job. Even the people who do the challenges, right? That was a huge problem last season as well. Those guys were clowns over there for some reason. Everything they were challenging was just terrible. Like either they were not challenging things that they should be challenging, or they were challenging things that they shouldn't be challenging. Like I said, it was just clown world. And funny enough, even that was addressed both by Draymond and Trace in the post-game conference as well. If you're a Warriors fan, you should start feeling some of the vibes that you might have felt 2 years ago when the Warriors started the season 18-2. That's the kind of group and mindset that they have going right now. Everything is structurally and fundamentally sound, and they are truly built to dominate the seasons. So even though they have a really tough schedule coming up on the road, I'm excited to see what else is in store for this team. Anyway, that's all for now. Plenty of more content to come. Thank you for watching as always. Until next time.